Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into one of the most shocking developments in recent months. Disaster has struck as Russia's key supply route crumbles overnight. This isn't just a headline or a rumor. It's a major event that could reshape the dynamics of the ongoing conflict. We're going to go through what exactly happened, why it matters so much, and what it means for the balance of power in the region. So, make sure to watch till the end, because the details behind this story are as complex as they are consequential. Overnight, reports began flooding in from multiple sources that a critical supply route, used by Russian forces, had collapsed. Whether through direct attack, sabotage, or accumulated damage over time, the result was the same. One of the logistical lifelines supporting military operations has been broken. This route wasn't just a side road. It was a major artery, transporting everything from fuel and ammunition to food, spare parts, and reinforcements. In modern warfare, logistics are the invisible backbone that keeps every gun firing and every vehicle moving. Without them, even the most powerful military grinds to a halt. The immediate question everyone is asking is how this could happen. From what we've learned so far, the route had been under pressure for weeks. There were reports of repeated drone strikes, sabotage attempts, and overuse of infrastructure that was never built to handle the sheer volume of wartime transport. The final blow may have come suddenly, but the warning signs had been there for a long time. Some analysts are pointing to targeted missile strikes on bridges or fuel depots along the route, while others believe poor maintenance and corruption in the supply system contributed to the collapse. In truth, it's likely a mix of both, a fragile system that finally gave way under stress. To understand the significance, we need to appreciate how vital this route was to Russian logistics. It connected several forward operating areas to central supply depots deeper in Russian-controlled territory. Through it, thousands of tons of cargo flowed daily. Trucks, rail cars, and fuel convoys moved almost continuously. The route supported not only frontline troops, but also repair stations, artillery units, and even air defense networks. Losing it overnight is like cutting off the main artery of a body. You might survive for a while, but every organ starts to feel the strain. Now, let's look at the immediate consequences. The first thing to happen after a logistics route collapses is confusion. Units that rely on scheduled deliveries start to miss their supply windows. Fuel doesn't arrive when expected, ammunition runs low, and medical evacuations get delayed. For troops on the ground, it's not just inconvenient, it's demoralizing and dangerous. A soldier running low on ammunition knows that every bullet now matters. A tank crew without fuel becomes a sitting target. The entire operational tempo slows down as commanders scramble to adjust their plans. There are also wider strategic implications. This kind of disruption forces the Russian military to reroute supplies through secondary or backup corridors, if they exist. But those alternative paths are often longer, less secure, and less efficient. They might run through areas more vulnerable to attack or require more fuel and vehicles to maintain. That creates a logistical snowball effect. More strain on resources, longer delivery times, and higher exposure to threats. Every kilometer added to the supply line is another opportunity for the enemy to strike. From the Ukrainian perspective, or from any adversary of Russia, this event represents a significant opportunity. If they can capitalize on the disruption, they can apply additional pressure on already stressed Russian positions. Attacking at the moment when the opponent's logistics are in disarray is a classic strategy. It amplifies chaos and multiplies the impact of the initial loss. And based on how quickly Ukrainian forces have been adapting and exploiting weak points in the past, it wouldn't be surprising to see them try to take advantage of this window of vulnerability. But let's talk about how something like this happens on a technical level. A modern military supply route can include highways, bridges, rail networks, pipelines, and even temporary pontoon crossings. Each of these is a potential weak point. Bridges can be targeted by precision missiles or underwater drones. Railways can be sabotaged with explosives. Fuel pipelines can be intercepted or cut off. Sometimes, just one bridge or one tunnel is all it takes to stop an entire supply chain. And when a collapse happens suddenly, it causes a traffic jam of military logistics convoys stuck. Supplies halted, command centers overwhelmed with rerouting operations. Another critical factor here is geography. Russia's supply routes often extend across long distances, through difficult terrain, and across areas that are contested or within range of enemy weapons. When you stretch your logistics thin, you invite risk. Every extra mile you extend your supply chain increases the chance of something going wrong, and in this case, those risks seem to have materialized all at once. Now let's look at the timing. This disaster didn't happen in a vacuum. It comes at a moment when Russia's military has been under growing strain. Sanctions have limited access to spare parts and imported materials. The ongoing war has consumed massive quantities of ammunition and fuel, and morale issues have been reported in several sectors. So when a major logistical route fails at this point, it hits much harder than it would have earlier in the campaign. The system was already stretched thin. This event could push it toward breaking point. So how has the Russian government responded? As expected, official statements have been limited, focusing on temporary disruptions and promises of rapid repairs. However, independent observers and satellite imagery tell a different story. Large stretches of the affected route appear impassable, with collapsed bridges, burnt-out vehicles, and destroyed depots. Repairing this won't be easy, especially under ongoing bombardment or drone surveillance. Even if engineers rush to set up temporary crossings, the vulnerability will remain. The enemy will likely target those fixes as soon as they're completed. Meanwhile, inside Russia, the loss of such an important route also creates internal political pressure. The public is becoming more aware of the mounting logistical and strategic costs of the conflict. Each failure erodes confidence in leadership and fuels debate about how sustainable the war effort really is. For the military, it means redirecting precious resources toward logistics and infrastructure instead of frontline operations. It's not just a setback, it's a sign of systemic weakness. What makes this situation especially dangerous is that logistics don't just support combat, they define it. Every successful military operation depends on timing, movement, and momentum. If supplies don't arrive on time, attacks stall. If communication lines are disrupted, coordination falters. And when both happen together, even the strongest army can lose its edge. This collapse might not immediately end operations, but it undermines their foundation. Looking forward, several scenarios could play out. In the best-case scenario for Russia, engineers manage to restore partial functionality within days or weeks. Convoys start moving again, though at reduced capacity, and the overall campaign adapts. In the worst-case scenario, the disruption lasts for months, forcing Russia to shift its operational focus entirely, maybe even retreat from certain positions that have become unsustainable. The real outcome will likely fall somewhere between these two extremes, but either way, the damage has already been done. Let's not underestimate the psychological impact either. Soldiers on the front lines hear about these things quickly. When they realize that their supplies are delayed or their routes home are blocked, it affects morale. Confidence in command decreases, fear increases, and rumors spread. On the other hand, the opposing side sees it as proof that their efforts are working, that their strikes are effective, and that victory might be possible. Morale is invisible, but it's one of the most decisive forces in war. Internationally, this event has drawn attention as well. Military analysts and intelligence agencies around the world are studying how such a critical route could crumble so fast. Some see it as evidence that Russia's infrastructure is overextended and poorly protected. Others interpret it as a sign that modern warfare has shifted decisively toward targeting logistics rather than direct combat. Destroying supply lines can be more effective than destroying tanks. After all, a tank without fuel is just metal sitting in the mud. There's also speculation about whether this collapse was entirely the result of external attack, or if internal negligence played a role. Corruption in infrastructure contracts, use of substandard materials, and falsified maintenance records have long been reported in parts of the Russian system. When you combine those structural weaknesses with the stress of wartime usage, disaster becomes inevitable. So, while missiles or drones may have delivered the final blow, the groundwork for collapse may have been laid years ago. For those wondering whether Russia can build new routes quickly, the answer is complicated. Technically, yes, temporary roads and bridges can be built, rail lines can be rerouted. But every kilometer of new route requires manpower, materials, and security. It also requires time. And in war, time is the one thing no one can afford to lose. Each day that supplies are delayed is another day the opponent can regroup, reinforce, and prepare. Some military experts have described this event as a logistical turning point. Up to now, much of the conflict has been characterized by grinding advances and attritional warfare. But if supply routes continue to be targeted and destroyed, we could see a shift toward paralysis on the Russian side. Less mobility, less initiative, more defense. That could alter the balance of power not just tactically, but strategically, reshaping how both sides plan future operations. There's also the economic ripple effect to consider. Military supply routes aren't isolated from civilian infrastructure. When a route collapses, civilian transport, trade, and energy flows are often disrupted too. Local populations may face shortages, and the cost of war begins to spill further into everyday life. That's part of the larger picture. The longer the logistics chain stays broken, the more the overall system, military and civilian alike, starts to feel the pain. On a technical level, rebuilding the destroyed route may involve not just engineering, but security reconfiguration. Russia may need to deploy additional air defense systems, surveillance drones, and electronic warfare assets to protect the replacement routes. That diverts resources from other priorities. It also means admitting that the enemy has the capability to strike deep into supposedly secure areas, which in itself changes the strategic calculus. This disaster also highlights how much warfare has evolved. In the past, armies fought over front lines. Now, they fight over supply lines. The side that can protect its logistics while disrupting the enemy's tends to win. This principle has held true since ancient times, but technology has made it far more precise and devastating. A drone strike today can destroy what used to require a full bombing campaign decades ago. A single precision missile can collapse a bridge that took months to build. As the story develops, what will be crucial to watch is how Russia adapts. Does it prioritize repairing the route or fortifying what's left of it? Does it attempt to build redundancy into its supply network, or will it double down on existing infrastructure? And perhaps most importantly, will it change its operational tempo to account for these vulnerabilities, or continue as if nothing happened? These are the decisions that will determine whether this disaster becomes a temporary setback or a turning point. For the global audience following this conflict, this event is another reminder of how fragile the machinery of war really is. Behind every tank and missile system, there's an invisible chain of trucks, fuel, railways, and workers keeping it all moving. Break that chain, and even the strongest power begins to stumble. That's what we're witnessing here, not just a tactical failure, but a glimpse into the limits of sustained warfare under pressure. As the days unfold, we'll likely see both sides adjust. Russia will claim quick recovery and deny the scale of the damage. The opposing side will try to exploit every weakness and continue targeting logistics wherever possible. Meanwhile, ordinary people in the affected regions will bear the brunt: disrupted transportation, fuel shortages, and growing uncertainty about what comes next. Every war is fought twice, once on the battlefield and once in the supply chain. In closing, this collapse of Russia's key supply route is more than a headline. It's a wake-up call about the realities of modern conflict. It exposes the vulnerabilities that come with overextension, the dangers of neglecting infrastructure, and the immense power that logistics holds over war's outcome. It's a story still unfolding, and its full impact might not be visible for weeks or even months. But one thing is clear: when the backbone of a military operation breaks, the consequences echo far beyond the battlefield. Thank you all for watching. If you found this breakdown informative, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next update. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. How do you think this disaster will shape the future of the conflict? Stay safe, stay informed, and I'll see you in the next one.